Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and what you just saw is the announcement trailer for Total War Pharaoh, which is the next historical title for the Total War franchise. Now, aside from this trailer, which really doesn't show much, there is also a FAQ blog post by Creative Assembly, which provides a bit more detail about this upcoming title, where they listed out the 8 playable factions for the game. And from this information, we can deduce the exact historical period the game will be based off of, as I want to take this opportunity to provide a bit of historical background to the setting. Now, with a name like Total War Pharaoh, we should naturally turn our attention first to the 4 playable Egyptian factions in Ramses, Seti, Tesret, and Amonmesi. And from these names, we can be certain that the setting will be the later periods of the 19th dynasty of Egypt, as Seti and Tesret are both children of Pharaoh Meneptah and the grandchild of the great Ramses II. Seti, or Seti II, was the chosen heir to become pharaoh after his father's death, but was challenged for the throne by Amenmesi, the usurper, who was likely Seti's brother. Ultimately, Seti would come out victorious in this struggle with his sister wife, Tesret, by his side, as almost all records of Amenmesi would be erased on Seti's command. However, after Seti's death, it was Amenmesi's young son, Septa, who would sit on the throne, with Tesret as his regent before his death a few years later, which would push Tesret to ascend the throne as a female pharaoh. Yet Tesret's reign would be short-lived, as she would be overthrown by Setnekta, heralding the end of the 19th dynasty and the beginning of the 20th. Setnekta's son, Ramses III, who will become the second pharaoh of the 20th dynasty, is also, of course, our last remaining playable Egyptian faction. And although his addition to the roster is slightly ahistorical in the sense that the conflict between Seti, Amenmesi, and Tesret predates Ramses by more than a decade, it makes sense in the general setting, as Ramses, or Ramses III, is hailed as the last great pharaoh of the New Kingdom, as his heroics will save Egypt against the invasions of the Sea People, saving Egypt from sharing the fate of complete destruction in a time where many Bronze Age kingdoms fell to ruins. But the combination of external threats and internal strife will weaken Egypt, and by the end of Ramses' reign, Egypt will lose its position as the dominant regional superpower, especially since Ramses' death would come at the hands of his own harem, as his second wife and her eldest son would kill him in cold blood, leading to a succession crisis. Now, with the Egyptian factions covered, let's shift to the 2 Canaanite playable factions in Bay and Ursu. Now, during this period, Kenai was under the influence of Egypt, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that Bay is actually a chancellor of Egypt, despite his Canaanite origins. Hailing from modern-day Syria, Bay entered the service of the Egyptian court as early as the reign of Meneptah as the scribe and butler, before climbing his way up the political ladder to become a major power broker in the later periods of the 19th dynasty. Now, his greatest claim to fame would be the fact that he was allowed to build his own pyramid in the Valley of the Kings despite his foreign origins. And although we do not know the exact reasons behind this decision, it is suspected that he was related to Pharaoh Septa's mother, who was a Canaanite concubine. Regardless, his power broker role would eventually doom him as he tried to usurp Tesret and was subsequently executed as a great enemy of Egypt. Now, while Bay was very much an Egyptian power with Canaanite origins, Ursu rose to power in the Canaanite lands, as infighting between Seti and Amenmesi created an opening for Canaanites to achieve a temporary period of independence. However, as the 19th dynasty ended, with Ramses III's father taking power, Ursu was killed as Egypt once again regained control over the Canaanite lands. And with the 2 Canaanite playable faction covered, this leaves us with the Hittites, who were another major Bronze Age kingdom that underwent major declines during this period, as the arrival of the Sea People heralded the end of the new kingdom of the Hittite Empire of which Suppiluliuma II was the last known king. Under his reign, the lucrative sea trade routes of the Hittite Empire was lost to the Sea People, before the capital city of Hattusa was sacked and abandoned, which spelled the end to the empire itself. Lastly, we have Karunta, who was Suppiluliuma's father's cousin. Little is known about him historically, aside from the fact that he was a discontent Hittite prince, and that he went as far as crafting seals, calling himself the Great King. But it is unclear if he tried to usurp the throne from Suppiluliuma's father, or simply declared his fief as an independent Hittite kingdom outside the influence of the larger empire. Overall, this roster of factions and time period makes Total War Pharaoh quite similar to Total War Troy, as the events of Troy happened during the reign of Tessret, and given that CA Sophia developed both Troy and Pharaoh, I am expecting many similarities between the games, even though Pharaoh is being hailed as a true historical title without any fantasy elements. Now, I'm sure for many of you, the announcement of Total War Pharaoh probably wasn't what you were expecting for the next historical title, as I am very much in the same shoes. Personally, for a new historical entry to the franchise, I wanted the historical setting of the rise of the Mongol empires, covering Europe to the west, Japan to the east, Russia to the north, and India to the south, with a mix of early gunpowder weaponry and advanced military tactics. But instead, we're going back in time with Total War Pharaoh, where combat is going to be limited to infantry of different weight class and chariots. Now, I don't want to get too negative on the game before even seeing any gameplay, so for the last bit of this video, I want to take a look at the post-launch roadmap laid out in the FAQ blog post. According to the Dynasty edition of the game, we should expect 3 faction packs and 1 campaign pack DLC for post-launch support, which seems to be all pre-planned already. And given how Troy DLCs feature 2 new playable factions per DLC, and also had 8 launch factions, I expect the 3 faction packs to add another 6 playable factions to the game, including key players such as the Sea People, which is not part of the base game. But what interests me the most is actually the campaign pack DLC, as while Pharaoh is a historical title, the setting of ancient Egypt seems to be begging for a Mythos campaign DLC, where gods and creature of mythology enters the fray in a very similar vein to Troy's Mythos DLC at the end of its support cycle. So without much else to go on, this is going to bring an end to our video. So what do you guys think about Total War Pharaoh? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!